What's good, y'all? It's your boy Havoc. Final round. Had a good little scrap last night. Shawn Porter versus Terence Crawford. I had Crawford anywhere from rounds 8 to 12 with the TKO or KO in my prediction. You know I don't like to do specific rounds. I like to break the fight down into 3 segments. You got the first part of the fight, 1 through 4. Then you got the middle of the fight, 4 through 8, and then you got the end of the fight, 8 to 12. I think that's a better way to kind of assess when a TKO or a knockout will come. But one thing I forgot to mention that I wish I did was this, okay? Terence Crawford is a slow starter. I don't even like to phrase it that way. It's not necessarily that he starts slow. It's that, like Lomachenko, Usyk, or like the back end of Mayweather's career, he likes to download your program. He likes to get a feel for what you're doing. He's very calm and composed. He's not going to freak out if you're up on the scorecards or if it's competitive on the scorecards or even if you're touching him at certain points in time. And once he kind of figures out the holes in your game and he gets a feel for you, that's when he's going to put his foot on the gas pedal and he's going to get you out of there. He's going to start to take over the fight to where he convincingly wins. I wish I mentioned that because that would have kind of set the stage for understanding how the fight was playing out. This fight was kind of reminiscent of Canelo and Caleb Plant, not stylistically, but in a sense of ring generalship. Because although I think Porter and Caleb had their moments in this fight, they made it somewhat competitive. I think the Caleb-Canelo fight, Caleb was more competitive on the scorecards than people gave it credit for. But both of them had their moments. Both of them caused a little bit of frustration, but ultimately, the top dogs in each of these fights, Canelo and Crawford, the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world, they had control the whole time, okay? They both had control the whole time. They both were ring generals. They both were being patient and implementing their game plan. I think Canelo got a little bit more frustrated, and he had Eddie Reynoso to kind of ground him back down and keep him steady, which is totally fine. But ultimately, Canelo still had control of that fight, and Crawford still had control of that fight. And both had game plans that were going to take effect in the later rounds. So, although this is one thing I learned about Crawford, a constant theme, because as I've said with Canelo, there's times where I'm like, I think he's beatable. The same thing with Crawford. I was skeptical of Crawford, especially early on, especially after the first time I saw him fight was against Gamboa. Okay, and a lot of people were saying this is next up-and-coming dude. And I was like, okay, well, let's see. And after that fight, he did good. It was a spectacular fight, legendary fight. But, you know, I had a lot of questions. He got clipped in that fight. You could touch him. And, you know, the fight was competitive. I actually had Gamboa in the early rounds. But I started to learn this. This was a constant theme throughout Crawford fights. And I had a lot of questions for him. I saw a lot of fights after that. I was like, the same thing. Well, he's getting clipped. He's down on the scorecard sometimes, or it's competitive. He's getting touched up. But I started to slowly understand, and this is the fight that I stopped questioning him. I think it was the Victor Postol fight, okay? Or it was like Lundy or something like that. May have even been Delorme. One of those fights. But it was one of those fights to where I started to say, I'm done questioning this guy. I don't think he's beatable. Because I started to see how he kind of fights. He takes time to download your program. He's very calm and composed. He doesn't freak out if he's down on the scorecards, if he gets clipped. You know, and even though he can be wobbled to a certain degree, I've learned he's dispelled my concern for that, because every time he gets hit or he gets wobbled from here to there, he's like a rattlesnake. He gets nastier. He focuses more. You know, he brings the fight to you. Okay? And I also learned that the only reason he falls back on the scorecards or the fight looks a little bit more competitive because he's very patient and he's trying to implement his game plan and he knows he's going to strike in those later rounds. Hence why I thought he would get the TKO or the KO somewhere around 8 to 12 in the back end of the fight, because that's usually when he strikes. And I knew it was going to be a TKO or a KO because of the punch placement and the combinations and the punches and bunches and the ability to step back. And with a guy like Shawn Porter, who can be a bull at times and who doesn't always control distance properly, jumping from outside to inside range, he was going to get caught with some stuff. And here's Another similarity between the Canelo-Caleb fight and this fight with Crawford and Porter. Canelo actually struggled to get downstairs, okay, on Caleb Plant early on in the fight. But there was a point somewhere around 8, 9, or maybe even 10, I think it was like 8 or 9, to where Canelo just landed this nasty combination to the body against Caleb Plant. Landed flush, just ripped him. And it changed Caleb's whole demeanor. It made him freeze, ice cold. I could see it because I know what that feeling is. I know how it feels to get ripped down in the body in the later rounds and you're absolutely tired. Same thing happened to Porter. And this is what set the stage for the knockout. A lot of people didn't see this, and I'm going to go into this even more a little bit later. But Porter, he got ripped to the body by Crawford, okay, a number of times. But there's this one combo that I saw that Crawford landed, same thing, around like 8 to 9, somewhere like one of those rounds. And Porter, he just froze, okay? Good poker face, but I can see it changed his whole demeanor, okay? And I knew right there that was the beginning of the end. Same thing with Caleb Plant and Canelo. When Caleb got ripped to the body, I was like, oh, that's it. Game over. Beginning of the end. You get ripped with body shots like that, okay, against the caliber pound for pound best fighter like that, you're probably not gonna make it. What you guys don't understand is, like, let's get into this. Well, before I jump into that, remember, before the fight, I said that Terence Crawford is a sniper. He's a sharpshooter. He's different from Spence. Spence, yeah, he can step back, he can counter. Usually it's one big punch. Sometimes he's off balance. Sometimes his punch placement is not spot on. He kind of puts his head down, and he's not as good as a counter puncher, especially going backwards the way Terence Crawford is. Terence Crawford, you can go look in clips in that fight. He's landing combos as he's stepping back, punches and bunches. The punch placement is phenomenal. I think he hit Porter to the solar plex in that one combination I was talking about that was the beginning of the end, and it was devastating. You know, Terence Crawford is a sharpshooter. He is a sniper, okay? And knowing Porter's style, I knew that was going to lead to a knockout in the later rounds. I knew that Porter would cause a little bit of frustration because he's a tough, nitty-gritty dude, okay? He's a tough guy, and he does a lot of different things to kind of throw you off, and it takes a little time to get his timing, but that's why I made the prediction I did. Now, as far as, let's start with this. Let's just nip this in the bud real quick. For people saying this was a fixed fight, shut up, dude. Please, if you're gonna start with this fixed bullshit, stop watching, stop bothering. If it's fixed, don't watch. Okay, it wasn't fixed. Get that crap out of here. We're done with that. I'm done talking with it. Now, for people saying that the fight was stopped early, this is the way I see this. Or I saw it. And it took a while, you know, for me to go overnight and kind of like wrestle with the idea of what happened last night, because I did think that Porter could have gotten back up and continued. But here's the thing. One thing that you guys didn't see was, like I said before, the body, the combination landed to the body that Crawford landed on Porter, which set the stage for the knockdown to begin with. Okay? And what you don't understand about these body shots, you guys. Now, if he just knocked him to the head, okay, fine. Maybe you let him back up and let him continue the fight. But when you establish that body attack, what you guys don't understand, that's like, I always give this example. I don't care if you got a Ferrari. I don't care if you got a Lambo. I don't care if you got a Hummer, an F-150, a G-Wagon. I don't care if your car's got 1,000 horsepower. I don't care how good it looks. I don't care how fast it gets off the line. If that vehicle does not have gas in the tank, it is not going anywhere. Doesn't matter how powerful, how fast, how flashy it looks. If it does not have gas in the tank, that car is going to sit still, okay? Same thing with a fighter. If you don't have cardio, or if your opponent is ripping you down to the body constantly, or he hits you with those perfectly placed body shots, which take gas out of your engine or your vehicle, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't going. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how fast you are. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how good your KO power is. If you do not have gas in the tank, that vehicle ain't going nowhere. Now, Crawford's body attack is different from Canelo's. Canelo's a hacker. Same thing with Spence. They're hackers. They like to implement their body attack early on. They like to stay consistent throughout each round and wear you down. They chopping the trunk of the tree down slowly until they break it in half. Spence is a sniper, okay? He's gonna find those holes and those weaknesses. He may not attack your body consistently throughout each round, but he's gonna wait for that perfect moment to land that combo to the solar plex, the floating rib, the kidney, the liver. And there's two ways to get down to that body. You can either constantly put a barrage of punches in each round to slow your opponent down, or you can put perfectly placed shots at certain points in the fight, which is the way Terence Crawford goes about it. So when I saw that perfectly placed combo, I knew that took all the gas out of Porter's tank. I could see it in his face. Okay, when it happened and he went back to his corner, I said, it's the beginning of the end right there. And he's not getting out of this fight. And then he got caught with the uppercut. And one of the things I always look at when a fighter's getting back up from a knockdown, what type of punches are they throwing? Because if they're not throwing with a lot of heat behind their punches, okay, then I start to think he can't defend himself. And obviously there's a lot of other factors you got to take into consideration. And even if you have an opponent who gets back up and they're dog backed up into a corner and they're throwing with heat, that could end up in an even worse situation, because now you're throwing punches, and if you don't land and you miss, you're completely off balance, your equilibrium's already off, and now you're gonna walk yourself into a big punch and get even more hurt. Now, in terms of the fight being stopped early, was it in a certain sense? Yes, it was stopped early. But do I think it was good? Yes, I think it was a good stoppage. You have to remember, Kenny Porter, the man right there, is a father first. Okay. And he said it himself in the post-fight press conference. He said, look, you guys, this boxing thing, we're pretty much done with this. Don't quote me word for word, but this is over, okay? In terms of competition. Me being a father, my father-son relationship with my son, that continues. We still got a lot of that to go. What you guys have to understand is that Shawn Porter has a life after boxing, you guys. He has a life after boxing. But the beautiful thing is he can continue to contribute to the sport in a different way rather than competing. But it's dependent on his ability to speak, to be articulate, to string together sentences. He even started a podcast, awesome podcast, love it. It's all contingent on his ability to articulate himself. This is the fight game, you guys. Okay, I know sometimes we're sitting from the outside looking in, and we don't think it's a big deal. Oh, he could have got back up. He could have taken a few more shots and, see what happens. You never know. He could have won the fight. You guys, this is no joke. Okay, all it takes is one punch to change a fighter's life or to kill them. People die in this ring. People die. People become vegetables. Go look at what happened to Gerald McClellan. One punch. Okay, or an accumulation of punches can change your life. And at the end of the day, us as fans, we're not gonna pay their bills, okay, when it's all said and done. We're not gonna take care of them, We're not. Shawn Porter has a life after boxing. He can continue to make money, okay, which is beautiful. That's beautiful, man. It's sad to see fighters having nothing after boxing, and then they got to keep fighting to make money, and they're taking more damage and punishment. We saw what happened to Muhammad Ali. We see the way James Toney speaks and slurs his word. We see, some of these fighters from the 80s who were dogs, and they went out on their shields. We saw what happened to them, how they end up. It's sad. At the end of the day, they have families to go back to. They worked hard, and they don't get to enjoy the hard work that all the hard-earned money that they made, because they fought a little too long. They hung in there a little bit too long. I miss the golden age of boxing, you guys. I miss that dog mentality. I miss going out on your shield. Don't get me wrong, but I totally get why these new age fighters are deciding, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And when you really think about it, it's not. I think about Deontay Wilder, you guys. And Mark Breland. Mark Breland did the right thing. He saw Deontay Wilder was done. He saw it. He knew it was over. There was nothing that okay, yes, and we know Deontay Wilder has the right hand of God. Anything could happen. And if anybody could do it, he could land that one lucky punch, even if he's out on his feet. But the odds and the percentages and the risk reward wasn't worth it. Deontay Wilder wanted to go out on a shield. Okay, you got what you wanted. You took that guy. I guarantee you he's suffering some sort of brain damage in the long run after taking the beatings he did from Fury. Okay, especially in the last fight. Mark Breland knew, like, this ain't worth it, bro. You ain't gonna win that fight most likely. Okay, do you got a puncher's chance? Sure, but you ain't gonna win that fight. Throw in the towel. You got a life after boxing. You want to keep that bad little light-skinned chick who's standing next to you right now? Let's come on. It's done with. You're not winning this fight. No point in taking unnecessary brain damage. Everything you did in front of your daughter, you're not going to be able to enjoy it, my brother. You can't. You do not need to take that unnecessary punishment. You're not going to win. It's okay. You did your best. Live your life after boxing, because if you turn into a vegetable, you can't speak and articulate yourself, you got to have somebody wipe your ass. How long is that pretty little light-skinned chick going to stand next to you? You know, how long is your family going to be able to, you're making their lives tougher. The fans won't pay your bills, dude. So I understand what Kenny Porter did. He's a father first. He's a father first, and he understands his son is a commentator in boxing, has a lot of potential to make a lot of money and continue to contribute to the sport and be a part of it. He has a podcast. Sure, could Shawn Porter have gotten up? Yeah, he could have. But at what cost? And you never know. Maybe getting up one more time would have been enough to permanently damage him. Am I being extreme? Maybe. But is it extreme when people have died in that ring? Is it extreme when we've seen fighters punch drunk after their career? Is it extreme? Is it? Is it extreme for me to think that if he got it one more time, that it could have been unnecessary damage? Because you're looking at that guy right there. He's the pound for pound best fighter in the world. He's one of the best finishers. Pound for pound, one of the best fighters in the world, and the best finishers in that division. No, just in general, one of the best finishers. Porter was not going to get out alive. And at first I thought about what Kenny Porter did. I thought it was a little bit egoic, and I think it is to a certain degree. There was a little bit of ego involved, but I kind of see why he stopped the fight early after I kind of meditated on it. Kenny Porter, we all know Shawn Porter's never been taken out, spark out, not cold out. Now he finally has. But what Kenny Porter said is like, look, I'm gonna save my son. I'm gonna take this one on the chin. You ain't taking out my son. I'll take out my son. Okay? And I'm gonna protect my son. And most importantly, I'm not gonna give anybody, and this is where the ego kicked in, I'm not gonna give anybody the right or give anybody or let them have that satisfaction of knocking my son cold out. Because that's what would have happened. There's no doubt about it. That's what would have happened. He would have gotten sparked, knocked cold out if that kept on going, or he would have been knocked down one more time, and if they continued again and he got back up again, it would have been ugly. And Kenny Porter knew where it was headed. He knew it was going. He knew his son was going to lose the fight at that point. And he said, you know what? I'm going to save my son. I'll take it on the chin. But nobody's going to ever be able to say they knocked my son cold out. And to a certain extent, I was like, well, this was probably Porter's last fight. Okay? Why not just kind of go for it, right? It's just your last time. Just go for it. But once again, he has too much going for him outside of boxing to take those punches and that damage. This guy's a killer. Whether you like him or not, he's a killer. Now, in terms of Porter, congrats to him on his retirement. I am completely a fan now. I didn't start off as a fan. I didn't really like his boxing style, but I always At the end of the day, I'm fans of any boxer. Okay, I don't care your level or how good you became. I'm a fan of any boxer who's dedicated to the craft and they're trying to get better. And I saw that in Porter. I think he should have stayed in one lane throughout his career. I think that he should have took advantage of his mentality as a dog and that nasty mentality, and kind of honed it into a pressure fighting style and sharpened and perfected one thing instead of trying to branch out to a lot of different things. I know I always talk about style benders and multi-dimensional fighters, but that's not for everybody. Those are for generational talents. Those are for guys like Boots Ennis. Those are for guys like Terence Crawford. You can probably even throw Canelo into that conversation to a certain degree. That's for guys like Tyson Fury. Not everybody can be a style bender, okay? It's hard to be, and if you are that guy, it is what it is. You're going up against a guy like that, it is what it is. It's gonna be hard to beat them because they got all the weapons in their arsenal. But I don't think Porter was that type of guy. Very athletic, very talented, had a great mentality, but I think he should have stayed in one lane. I think, like I said in the breakdown video, he had his most success against Spence when he was settled down and he was exchanging. And he had some nice points in the fight with Crawford when he was settled down and he was exchanging, putting pressure and cutting off the ring. He did a pretty good job of feinting in the beginning. He did a good job of utilizing his jab, but I didn't necessarily like when he got up on his toes, he started bouncing around. I understand the logic in it. There was some logic in it. He was trying to give a different pace and a tempo and keep Crawford guessing and trying to keep him resetting. But a guy like Crawford, to me, it was almost like Porter was signaling, I'm gonna try to outbox you. And he made it 10 rounds. It was a pretty good showing, but I think he would have been more effective if he decided to pay tribute like he did with his attire of Marvin Hagler going to war. If he took that approach, be Marvin Hagler. You got the right mentality, the right mindset. Put pressure, be consistent. Let's finally tune who you are into being this nasty, aggressive pressure fighter. I think he would have given Crawford a little bit more trouble. Ultimately, I still think he would have lost. But Porter, I think he was trying to do a little bit too much. And he's not that type of fighter who can do all the things he was trying to do. And I said it in the fight breakdown as well. That on your toes style, you better be able to control distance and manage it very well. You have to be a master of it, because I constantly see when Porter is up on his toes, he's jumping from outside to inside range. And that's how you get timed and clipped on your way in, especially against a guy like Bud. Okay, and I wish I mentioned that before. One thing about Bud is he's a slow starter. There was a point in time to where I actually had just like I had with Canelo, there was a point in time with Crawford, I was like, man, I think this guy's beatable. I still have questions about him, okay? Because the first time I saw him was against Gamboa. Great fight. I saw him get touched up. I saw him get wobbled. I saw I actually had Gamboa up on the scorecards in the beginning of that fight, and then he slowly turned it around. And I said, it was a great fight, great win, but this guy, I think he's beatable. And it was not, I think, until like the Postol fight to where I started to say, I'm done questioning this guy. I think he's the real deal. I think he's unbeatable. That was the one fight that I stopped questioning Terence Crawford, because I started to see this constant theme. Terence Crawford is going to download your program. It's going to take him a little bit. He's going to be calm and composed. You may be able to touch him up. You may be able to make it competitive on the scorecards. But once he figures you out, it's game over. Point blank, period. And in terms of the chin, he has a rock solid chin, in my opinion. You can say he got knocked down, but Mean Machine, regardless, he got back up and he won the fight. And when he gets clipped, when he gets hit, he fights harder and he tends to focus in more. And he's been clipped multiple times to where I see this reoccurring over and over. I'm like, this guy has a good chin and he gets more focused when he gets hit. So I'm done questioning that. I mean, maybe that's something along to think about in the future as he's getting older, but I don't question that anymore. This guy is the truth. He's the real deal. And I think he easily, I'm not going to say easily, but I think he dismantles Spence. Spence is too one-dimensional. I think the hardest fight for Crawford is Boots, to be honest. I think it's Boots Ennis. But I don't think Spence, and look at Spence. I've been saying this, you guys. Like, Crawford is not ducking Spence. If anything, it's the opposite. We're like, dude, Spence, get your tail out of your ass, in the words of Terence Crawford. Why didn't you climb up in the ring? The least you could do is walk up close to it and be like, yo, I'm ready, let's go. This doesn't sound like a dude that wants that fight with Terence Crawford. You know, I love what Terence Crawford said when Bob Arum was right next to him at the post-fight press conference, and Terence Crawford was like, look, Bob didn't secure this fight with Errol Spence for me when I was working with him, so I don't see why he would secure this fight with Spence when I'm not with him. And I was like, damn, mic drop. And I'm glad Bud sees that. He should be moving forward with his career. Look, he should be, you know, whoever wants it should come get it. But it should be Spence. Spence needs to step up. And everybody's asking, what's up, Spence? You gonna take the fight? And he's like, oh, I don't know. We'll see. You know, we just have to wait and all this. And what are you talking about, dude? You should have been up in that ring, ready to go, promoting this next fight, pushing for it, and be like, yo, I'm ready to go. Instead, he walks out of the arena and he's being all salty. Oh, I thought the fight was stopped too early. He's a warrior. Okay. You just salty that you went all 12 with Porter. Spence knows who the best welterweight in the world is. Okay? It's Terence Crawford. Point blank period. Terence Crawford. He's the best welterweight in the world. The only one I think who's going to give Terence Crawford problems is Boots Ennis. And that's it. That's it. Virgil Ortiz is nice. Spence is nice, but stylistically speaking, I don't think they beat Terence Crawford. And here's another thing. Spence, if you ain't gonna freaking fight Terence Crawford, how about you go and face Boots? Okay, so he can take your belts. And we can get the fights we want. Because, dude, you ain't showing that you are the best welterweight in the world. Or take a fight with Virgil Ortiz. At least that. You know, take a fight. Keith Thurman, fine, I guess. I don't really want to see that fight, though. Spence should be pushing for Crawford, and if you ain't gonna fight Crawford, how about you give one of these young guns a chance to start making a name for themselves in the welterweight division? Because I know Boots, he's ready for all the smoke. He's ready to take you on right now, dude. Get out the way. Hand those belts over so we can get the fights we want. Because I would love to see Boots versus Crawford. I don't know what's up with Spence, you guys, but you know, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully this fight goes down next. Hopefully it's mandatory. I don't know all the boxing politics, but yeah, it was a great night. Congrats to Porter for a great career. Like I said, he's like the Nate Diaz of boxing. I got a lot of respect for him. He's come a long way, and I'm so glad he has a life after boxing, so I wish him all the best. And congrats, my man. You've come a long way. I truly respect you for developing the way you have. That's what I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of guys who try to perfect their craft in boxing, who take it seriously. And Bud Crawford, pound for pound, one of the best in the world. I can't really... I have a different criteria for this pound for pound stuff than most people. It's tough for me to call right now. I really think it's somewhat of a tie between Canelo and Terence Crawford at this point. But, you know, if Crawford can get someone like Spence under his belt, or maybe he goes up in weight, you know, maybe he can get that top spot back or break the tie. That's a tough one to call. That's for another time and a day. But nonetheless, one of the pound for pound best fighters in the world. I'm very excited for what we have coming in the future. And hopefully Spence gets his tail out of his ass so we can get this fight before it turns into a Manny Pacquiao-Mayweather situation and it kind of fizzles out. Still got some big fights ahead, you guys. Still got some big fights ahead, so I'm excited. We're back on track with the predictions. Had 3 correct ones. Like I said, I took a little one-off with Canelo and Caleb, but we're back on track. And let's build this channel. If you're new, subscribe, comment down below, like the video. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think we're going to get that fight with Spence Crawford. Tell me if you thought the fight was stopped too early. Tell me what you thought about what Kenny Porter did. What do you think about Shawn Porter's retirement? I mean, look, you guys, boxing's still here, but we got to push as fans to get the fights we want. So keep pushing, keep talking, get on these online panels because people are listening. Until another one, it's your boy Havoc. We'll find around. Get at me.